Two friends, Alan Dale and Jerry Carew, who grew up just a few streets apart in St. John's East End, have been separated by Canada's geography for 3 decades. They came together virtually during the pandemic to chat about like-minded interests. Alan lives in PEI and Jerry in Newfoundland. Thriving in remoteness has been a common theme for both of them during the pandemic. Gale Force Wins, the podcast is the result.
Well, welcome to another edition of Gale Force Wins. I'm Alan Dale, and with me, as always, my good buddy from the East End of St. John's. How are you, Jerry?
I couldn't be better, Alan. Frankly, there's so much going on for you and I. This podcast is really, really exciting. The comments on LinkedIn are just so positive. It's filling my heart with joy. Talk about that. We have a guest that I've known for I think we were just talking about it, something like 35 years. He's come in and out of my life over the years. And I really look forward to kind of going down through Scott's journey. Despite the fact I know him, I don't necessarily know the sequence of events over the last 35 years and all the different things that he's involved in. So I'm really looking forward in this session to get through all that with him.
100%, Jerry. And you're right. The conversation happening on LinkedIn, on Facebook, and social media in general, Twitter, around the conversations we're having on Gale Force Wins are really quite inspirational. And it's not about Gale Force Wins. It's about the people that we interview, and it's about their journeys and their stories. And people are finding inspiration through those. And that really is what Gale Force Wins is all about. So we're certainly excited to get into this conversation. So without further ado, Scott, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself?
Well, my name is Scott Giannou. I live in St. John's, Newfoundland with my wife, Judy, and my son, Jack. I've been, I guess you'd say, a serial entrepreneur since the age of about 24 when I started my first company, which is still in existence. And I guess I've really done everything from sell the best wines in the world to be the owner of one of the most iconic motorsports events in North America and really the world with my dad and my family.
Interesting stuff. I can't wait to get into all of it. Where did you grow up? Right in St. John's proper?
I did. I grew up in St. John's by the Avalon Mall, and I spent my summers in Topsail Pond, where my son actually is 5th generation in the old residence that my family has been on for a long time up there.
Brothers, sisters, all that out there too?
I have one sister, and she's a force to be reckoned with. She's quite the athlete, multiple Ironmans, and yeah, she's something else for sure. And both my parents are alive. They're only 79 years old, and my dad and I were business partners, as I said, and he was an ex-race car driver, as I still am, and my mom sort of was the glue that kept us all together.
Yeah, that's I love to hear those stories of the family and kind of the foundation that it gives you moving forward. And I bet your mom and dad gave you that foundation, eh?
Yeah, 100% actually. I'm very blessed, as is my wife. Both sides of our family have been generational entrepreneurs in all sorts of different businesses and walks of life. But yeah, it's definitely a very entrepreneurial family on both sides of my wife, Judy, and my family. Everything from my great-grandfather first going into New York City in 1907 and selling roses on the side of the road at 12 years old. So, and then ending up in St. John's, Newfoundland, if you can believe that, with definitely some stories en route.
How did the journey from New York to Newfoundland, what was that?
Well, he originally came over from Greece as a young 12-year-old boy and ended up in New York, then Delaware, and then Yarmouth, Nova Scotia, Halifax, and then owned a restaurant on Rollins Cross called the Terry Inn. And then my grandfather, George, went to Water Street and started the Sweets Shop, which most people will remember as probably one of the largest restaurants in Newfoundland at the time.
Wow. So entrepreneurism is all the way back in your family.
And back, Scott, honest to God, I didn't know any of that. I had an inkling, but now this is why I love this. Great stuff.
Yeah.
Man.
Yes, absolutely. And my other great grandfather, Case, was actually a chemist from Salmon Cove who ended up working with with Dosco on Bell Island, and then ended up developing a wonderful wholesale and retail business over there, and housing for the men and that sort of thing. So yeah, I guess it's always passed down. And my dad is a serial entrepreneur as well. Many different types of businesses over the years, and as he'll tell you, the good, the bad, and the ugly, some highs, some lows. And he said to me the other day, well, you've learned a lot from me, and I think you've learned an awful lot not what to do as well. So I guess that's a true entrepreneurial family where you have wins and losses.
Well, 100%, right? And an entrepreneur will always tell you they learn as much or more from the losses as they do the wins. Am I correct?
Yeah, well, the losses usually cost you money. So you tend to want to stay away from those, I think. Yeah, absolutely.
They're burned in your memory. So you were destined to be an entrepreneur, obviously, but you had a little deviation we talked about before we came on, and you and Jerry had joined the Naval Reserve together. Is that correct?
We did, absolutely. And Jerry, I know we were, I don't know if we were old enough to drink, but I think we were 18 or 19 when we did it. And yeah, that was a wonderful summer. I must say my family is very so respectful of the military, and I would call ourselves, we grew up as monarchists for sure. So my uncle Harry Roberts, I think, was one of the patrons of Cabot, where we went. And then after that, I got my career in, I guess, Coca-Cola. I've only ever worked for really two companies, which was SR Resources and Coca-Cola. So, and then I went out on my own. So the year after we did the program, the naval program, we did. I did summer merchandising for Coca-Cola. So that was really my entrance into the beverage business.
And was that the first business, Scott? Was it in the beverage world? That was your first business?
Well, it's if you want a funny kickoff, I actually decided I wanted to do something on my own, and my grandfather wintered in Fort Lauderdale, and he actually had a good friend of his was a gentleman by the name of Murray Anderson. And if you look at the gymnastic equipment, there's Spieth and Anderson, and they were the partners, and they had the largest provider of gymnastics equipment in the world, and by far in North America. And I decided that maybe I would ask Murray if I could represent him for Atlantic Canada and sell gymnastics equipment. So you can only imagine how non-profitable that was, but that was my first, what I'll say, opportunity to go out and try and sell something, was that, believe it or not. And
how old were you then, Scott, would you say?
Oh, I was 23 or 24, I guess. I just
early start.
I was just finishing up with Coca-Cola, and I love to ski, so I had gone to White Hills to help instruct out there and help with coach the race team, and sort of that was my time off before I did something. And then I started really in, I guess, after the ski season in April, I started in, and then I had another mentor of mine by the name of Ryan Jardine, who ran Coca-Cola for Atlantic Canada, and he had some friends over with Perrier and Nestle, and I got my first sort of non-alcoholic line, which was Montclair spring water. And I started selling that, and then we had Dad's Old Fashioned, and I basically set up a brokerage, which was heavily beverage weighted. But then we had specialty foods, Lindt chocolate, we have jams, and really. And then I did sub deals with other companies to, represent, like even a local wholesaler. I go out and sell for them if they weren't in an area. So, back then you had to sell whatever whatever's in your bag. So I could be selling you a postcard or a Lindt chocolate bar, but didn't matter. I went right across the island every couple of months and hoped that I made enough money to pay for my expenses when I came back. And sometimes I didn't, but it grew from there.
I read a little bit on your LinkedIn and stuff, and you talk about selling and business development is really relationship development. Tell me about that.
Yeah. So, I mean, people buy from people they like, and people buy from people they trust. So I think if you got the right ability to build relationships with people, they'll buy whatever you're selling, if it makes sense. But out of those relationships, with the Frank de Vries of the world who ran Perrier, another friend were people in the beverage alcohol business. So, our first wine line, and we've built a fairly substantial company within Atlantic Canada in beverage alcohol. And, we started speaking with the people from Andre's Wines at the time, which is Andrew Peller, and they decided it made sense for them to come with us. And that was really our first beverage alcohol line. But it also gave us about 13 or 14% of the market share as soon as we took it over. So that gave us some critical mass to build on. And then we looked at emerging markets. We knew Australia was, a growing origin of a country of wine. And then, we just started to build on that. And we launched craft beer before it was even cool. We launched Sleeman here some 20 odd years ago. So, and then we started working with Kitty Vitty, and we just built the company really away from food and everything else into beverage alcohol business.
It's interesting to hear you talk about that, because I can imagine that the market must have been crowded in that industry, wasn't it?
Well, it was crowded from a spirit standpoint, very undergrown, or emerging market when it came to finer wines and that sort of thing. So it was really underdeveloped market. We really saw an opportunity. Everything from bringing Sleeman beer into we launched Mike's Hard Lemonade here, and we'd always try to be a bit ahead of the curve. And same with the craft industry, really. Brands like Muskoka and Gahan from PEI, where you're from, Alan, these days. We went after those guys 10 years ago to get the brands, because we looked at what was going on in the US and said, craft beer, it's profitable for us from a commission standpoint, and it's an emerging category that we want to be the category leader in. So that's sort of the way that we've always looked at that business.
It's fantastic. Scott, you mentioned back a few minutes ago about a mentor you had. And a lot of entrepreneurs that we have on often talk about their mentors. They talk about the people that they got guidance and advice and from. Tell us about the importance of the mentorship to you.
Well, it's important because I mentioned Brian Jardine, who was a guy that certainly opened doors, but there was a gentleman out of Ottawa by the name of David Reed that really, once I got in the business, he brought me forward and sort of taught me the ropes. We were selling spring water in Newfoundland when people thought we were crazy. Right. Put it in your cooler and charge $1. They said, well, we have the best water in the world, but look where we are now. So, how do you do that, and how does it look? And mentorship is really important. My dad's been a huge mentor to me. Yeah. Just from what he taught me to look for, and I guess sometimes learn by his mistakes as opposed to his wins. He said lots of wins, but he certainly was a huge mentor. My grandfather George was a huge mentor to me in the way you deal with people and the way you deal with things, and the value of $1, because although he ended up being very successful, and he really came from nothing. My great grandfather was, as I said, all but a stowaway coming into New York City. So that side of the business, that side of the family.
Yeah. And would you think that the people that you all just mentioned, would they recognize themselves as your mentors? You saying that now out loud, or do they just take that for granted that they're providing you that advice?
Yeah, no, I think they would. Unfortunately, two of the non-family members, it's been a long time since I've spoke to them. But, we've also created a whole bunch of different businesses over the years. And, whenever you talk to someone in business, I think you should try to give them the best opinion you can. And I think we mentor every day, to be honest with you.
Yeah, I think you're right, Scott. I whether we know it or not, we are mentoring. And when you're open and you're happy to share those experiences with somebody, especially somebody coming up, right? And it's a wonderful thing. And while you may not realize it in the moment, you can imagine that they're benefiting from your comments, eh?
100%, and that's why you sort of gotta be very upfront and truthful in all these things, and the good, the bad, and the ugly. I guess sometimes they don't want to hear it from you, but you need to let them know. And
Yeah.
I guess we do. We as we age, we get a little tougher and understand things a little better. So someone said to me the other day, they said, I wish I know, then what I know now. And like, that's not the way life works. It's
No.
we learn as we grow.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's kind of a
100%.
foolish statement to say, isn't it? Because it ain't going to happen that way.
No, it isn't. But yeah.
I may have a tough question for you, and we're going to get into it all, but how many businesses do you actually have up and running right now? What?
No, I mean, me personally, only maybe 3 or 4, but my wife is a true entrepreneur as well. And between her and her brothers, they're in the hotel business and a whole bunch of different things. But I mean, I've really sort of crafted it back. I got out of the motorsports promotion business. We're heavy in HR right now with our companies, Hire Talent and Jump. Really 4 pillars: executive search, permanent placement, strategic HR, professional services, and physician recruitment.
Okay.
And then really, then there's the beverage alcohol business that we have, that side of it. And then there's a couple other things, but I mean, really, I've been building the HR company right now. That's
I remember, sorry for interrupting you, but I remember when you brought Hire Talent here, it actually was Jump first.
It was,
first.
Jump was first. It's amazing to talk about that, Jerry, because not in a million years would I ever think I'd be in the HR business. And believe it or not, my dad was a labor negotiator in my house as we grew up, and he was a management consultant to companies for their to negotiate their union contracts and negotiate with the union and all that sort of thing. And I never thought in a million years, but it was a business deal I did with a guy in Halifax, and he had Jump over there, and he figured I actually got in the business with him over in Danny Hewitt with Innovative Beverages. It was a beverage alcohol business similar to ours, the Beverage Baron. And lo and behold, a few years into that, he said, I've got a fairly successful recruitment company over here called Jump. Would you be interested in starting a branch or opening an office here in St. John's? And so of course I did. I other than I'd known a little bit about from growing up in our house. I mean, it was nothing like what Dad did. I mean, he didn't do recruitment, but
No.
We started, and lo and behold, Danny's still in beverage alcohol, and then I own Jump, and then we bought Hire Talent, and we've expanded, and we're in major growth mode right now. So, but I've enjoyed it. My partner always says, I say, no, Nick over now. He's the expert, and he goes, like, you're 10 years in now. You know what you're talking about at this point.
It's funny, Jerry and I we just came from a defense and security trade show in Halifax, and big companies there, everything from the Lockheed Martins to the Giannou Designs and all kinds of really, great companies with big government projects and lots to offer people in the industry. And their number one concern generally seemed to be finding talent, finding people to work with. So I think that the HR field must be just a wonderful place to be in right now, especially in and around Atlantic Canada. But you did say one thing that I'd like to pick up on, and I'm sure this one is a challenging one, and that is physician recruitment. Tell me about that.
Yeah, so we have a fulfillment agreement with Can-Am Recruitment, who are out of Halifax, and we basically provide the service for our experienced senior recruiters, do the recruitment for different private practices and healthcare boards. So we do an awful lot of work with Central Health here in Newfoundland and the other boards, and we do work in New Brunswick. So we really fulfill. I think we were a good option for John not to have to scale his company, and we had the expertise and the people. So that's been exciting. That's about 3 years for us right now, but that's certainly a growth business. COVID had an awful lot of adverse effects on that. Just physicians can't do site visits. They can't come in and do locums. So although we had a good pipeline, we were we were about, we were stagnant for 10 to 12 months when that couldn't happen. But that's turned the corner now. So we are bringing signing contracts with physicians into Atlantic Canada, which is good for all of us.
Which is good for everybody.
Yeah, I just want to say, Alan, one thing I'll say, the pandemic has been tough on a lot of people, but one of the things I really, really liked is on your LinkedIn profile, you're constantly sharing jobs. I mean, with the doom and gloom and the initial stages of it and everyone getting laid off, you guys were a beacon of light on LinkedIn because, I think there might have been a little bit of a lull as everyone was trying to get their footing. But over the last 6, 7, 8 months, you're just constantly banging out, there's jobs. And that is so nice to see.
Yeah, Jerry, to that point, I think we definitely are a light at the end of the tunnel. We were in this house. My wife is in the hotel business, so we have 3 properties. We know that life as we know it has just changed, but they did a phenomenal job of getting through it. Everyone went into sales mode, and we sort of thought, oh boy, here we go in our recruitment side. But a lot of our IT clients thought it was a good time to get out and get front and center and get the talent they needed. So when we thought we were going to be, going backwards, we started to get the momentum. And you're right. I mean, it's we satisfy a client's need. We find the talent they need. And you mentioned earlier, Jerry. I don't know if you realize, but I think Gina did that year with us as well.
She did.
Because Gina and I were in grade. We went to high school together. So. Companies like Giannou and Skyhawk Telematics and a Clear Risk, a bunch of people probably been on your podcast. They thought it was time to get in the market and be a buyer. And honestly, for us, 2 things: it gave us business we otherwise wouldn't have, but it also gave us some more expertise in the IT space, which is very important for us right now. So a lot of the upward mobile companies in Atlantic Canada are using Jump and hire talent for the recruitment. So it sort of gave us a good positioning as well in that space. So out of every something bad, something good comes at times. So sometimes you're on the right side. So I think we were, it's been fun.
I had the pleasure, Scott, to work in recruitment when I was in the Canadian Forces for a number of years. One of my tasks was actually physician recruitment, and it wasn't an easy sell at the time. It was during the height of the Afghanistan conflict, and we were taking people basically into the military, putting them through basic training, sending them off. It wasn't as pretty a picture as going to Summerside or Charlottetown or what have you. But I really, really enjoyed the work, and what I enjoyed about recruiting so much was being able to connect people to a meaningful job and a meaningful kind of future for them. I always found it so very rewarding. So good on you. I think that whole recruitment piece is very rewarding and special work in many respects. Scott, we talked a little bit earlier about, and you mentioned it here in passing, that motorsports had been in your portfolio.
I knew you were going to go down that road, Alan. Pardon the pun.
I want to hear a little bit about that. Yeah.
Well, you know what? I guess I always used to joke. Most kids would, their families would pack up and go to a park or they go fishing. But in my family, we packed up and went racing, and that could be to Argentia, where there was a track, or it could be over your way to at A&P in Shubenacadie, originally to Berth, right, the old airfield there, or to Quebec. So, yeah, my dad was, I think he was probably one of the first Newfoundlanders ever to have a national race license. He went at 16, I think it was, to Mosport, where I do a lot of racing these days, and got his license, and then got heavily involved with motorsports in Canada. At one point was Atlantic race director. Then he was national race director. He was very much a builder in the motorsports. In 1974, he brought the Players Formula Atlantic Series here around the Confederation building. So some of the people listening that are around my age and Jerry's age there will remember that. And then our latest...
Scott, I remember that. And I'm telling you, that was a highlight. I was born, I'm 55 now. So I would have been 8 years old, but I remember
exactly,
that. Yeah, that was your
and
dad that put that together. That's awesome.
He did, yeah, and that was a big series. I mean, a lot of the F1 racers that went on, they came out of the Formula Atlantic series, Gilles Villeneuve, guys like that. So that was really one of his largest efforts until we started the Targa Newfoundland, which ended up being a phenomenal event. I spent 10 years as his business partner developing that event, and that was something else. And my passion is to race cars, same as my dad was. So I've been lucky enough to do it all through North America and race at some of the big races and or big tracks. So yeah, that's our very common passion as a family for sure.
And what kind of cars, Scott? What were you racing?
All kinds. I just raced 3 weeks ago. At Mosport, I race 1981 911 SC, which is a vintage race car, or classic actually. Yeah. But I've raced everything from BMWs to Hondas to you name it. I've raced quite a few.
That's fantastic. Yeah. It must be a great feeling to get in behind the wheel there and just let it go, eh?
Yeah, well, that's one way to put it. It's like nothing else. I mean, Targa is unbelievable because you're in closed competition stages through all the small communities in the province, and that's just something else. But yeah, when you're on a track with 80 cars and everyone's trying to go into that first turn be number one through, it's exciting. For an adrenaline junkie, there's nothing better.
Alan, I want to just say to Scott, I loved Targa. It was just like, I'd go down to Torbay, I would go wherever the legs were happening. But I did have the good fortune of spending 8 hours in a Ferrari up around the Bada Vista area. And I will tell you, I'm sitting as a passenger, and the guy that owned it is there. And after about 4 hours in the Ferrari, and it's loud and everything, I looked at him and I said, "This is not very comfortable." And he goes to me, he said, "This is for looks, Jerry."
Well, anyway. Jerry, Targa, you do 6 days of that in an open exhaust race car at incredible speeds, and you're just being bounced around, and you're at the end of the week, I can promise you're ready for a couple of weeks off. But
yeah, I bet.
I think motorsports is a lot like business in the preparation you need to do. If you don't have the prep and you don't have the right team around you, you're not going to win. The driver's only one small component.
Yeah. The
car's got to be prepared right. You got to have the right guys preparing the car. You got to have the right guys looking after the car. So I think that's a great analogy to, successful companies, how you set them up.
100%. Is Targa Newfoundland still a thing, or is that?
I think, you know what, myself and my wife were Dad's partner, Judy, and I think we got out after the 10th one.
Right.
We'd ridden the wave. We'd set, 120 million households had the ability to watch that event worldwide. I mean, it was crazy. And then Dad has been working along with some of his members of the team, but COVID's put a spanner into it. So I don't know. I think the dates have been announced for next year. I did 11 of them. I drove them myself, and maybe I'll go back at some point, but we'll see.
Scott, you keep mentioning, and we had the privilege of meeting at the beginning of the conversation here today, but you keep mentioning Judy this and Judy that, and Jerry and I are fortunate that we have very, very supportive partners in our lives, and we know the importance of that. Tell us a little bit about that support and mechanism for you, and what keeps you going there with Judy.
Yeah, well, it's 25 years of that. I mean, as we said, the highs and the lows of business on both sides. So we're certainly each other's number one cheerleader. And quite frankly, she's a lot smarter than me, to be honest with you. So I probably get a lot more from her than she does from me. But no,
it's the same for me and Alan, Scott, if it makes you feel any better.
No, but we talk things through, and we make the right decisions, and it's all or none. I mean, her whole family is entrepreneurial. Every one of them. Her dad is an entrepreneur, and Judy and her two brothers are business partners in their company. And yeah, so I mean, it's always been supporting. It's we had motorsports was probably the hardest one, because there's a lot of risk and there's not a lot of reward, which is not really, but it was driven on passion and just raw thrill. So those were hard days, but we got through them. And but that was probably the most stressful part of our business side of being husband and wife, I would think.
Yeah. There's nothing better though than having that person that you can come home to at the end of a stressful day or even a great day, right? And to share the experience with, eh?
Yeah, no, 100%. Yeah, 100. Yeah, like we said, the good, the bad, and the ugly, you know. So, but yeah, I mean, it's, you know, it's been different for everyone for the last 18 months. It's this is when you need a support network. There's no doubt. It's there's no denying it.
100%.
And I can only imagine, you know, I know Judy and I know the business she's in, and then of course the hotel industry was hit so hard. So it's just obvious, you know, 10 years in the automobile industry. It's awesome to see that you guys are still persevering, because frankly, you know, Scott, there's no other alternative, is there? Once you get in business, you got to keep going, right?
Yeah. Well, I don't know if you guys heard, but, you know, really there's 3 F's: freeze, flight, or fight. And I can guarantee you we weren't freezing and we weren't going anywhere. So, you know, like, and I think they did the same thing in the hotel business that we did in our business. We just started selling. Everything's about sales right now, and minimize expenditure and maximize output and get paid. It's always a hard thing.
I mean, it's been fantastic to know where you've come from and indeed what you're involved in, certainly now. Tell me what's over the horizon. I mean, you don't seem like the type of guy that's going to settle down right now. So what's over the horizon for you?
No, I think I think we've got more work to do with hire talent. I think there's a few things that some other probably pillar. The big one for us would be temporary staffing. We've just launched that. We've got some contracts. Just grow that business a little more. Just take a little more advantage of the healthcare part of it. But I'm always open to you know, new projects, and I'm always looking. And you know, I'm dabbling in other things and helping out friends of mine from the mainland that need help here in some of the things they're doing. And you know, we do an awful lot for charity. Both Judy and I and my son, Jack, who's, you know, another team member here, because there's only 3 of us. We're a small family. So
right.
We do a lot
of
charity.
I want to give you a shout out on that, because, you know, we both worked at the Y, or on the Y. You ended up taking over as chair of the YMCA, and that is never an easy task. As a past chair myself, I know, but I could tell you were definitely one of the most passionate people there. And, you know, for that, I commend you.
Yeah. So, yeah, you know, I appreciate that, Jerry. Thank you. But, you know, more charitable stuff, you know, just enjoy things a little more and not get as torqued out as you can. I mean, it's, you know, it's stressful. You go through 3 emotions and you're not even at 9 o'clock in the morning these days. But, you know, I just build things, you know, to Alan, to answer your question. You know, there's lots of things. I'm always looking for opportunities, and there's lots of opportunities out there. You know, just look for the next one to be part of something special. And I'm not always concerned about the biggest. I just want to have the reputation as being the best and someone that people want to do business with. I think that's the most important thing, to be honest with you.
Is Jack entrepreneurial as well?
He is. Yeah. He's highly trained in hospitality. That's what his business degree is in. And but I mean, if you asked him tomorrow, I'm sure he'd like to come in and be part of the family business at some point. Probably will, but yeah, he's entrepreneurial.
Yeah. Yeah. It sounds like it would be hard to escape that in your family tree.
Yeah, there's no doubt about it.
Yeah, I think there's about 400 entrepreneurs in there, Alan. Is there something like that?
Yeah,
there's an awful lot. I mean, every one of them, even my brother's kids, you know, they've gone on to open their different businesses and that sort of stuff. So yeah, that's, you know, always Sunday dinners are always heavily business topics.
I bet.
Yeah.
They Scott, you've had a great journey, and it sounds really fascinating. And I enjoy your genuine conversation around business and building business and what it takes. We often ask our guests to leave the audience with a small piece of advice, and here you are. You've done a lot of things, and we talked about mentorship, and we talked about the importance of that as well. What would that piece of advice be?
Well, it could take you 150 ideas before you try one, because within 5 minutes, you'll probably have yourself talked out of why it won't work. Pay attention. There's lots of people that want to help you and mentor you. Get in with the right people. Just be open to ideas and opportunities. And, I'm really, really, really boisterous on Newfoundland right now and Labrador. I think we are right on the cutting edge of greatness, and I think we got an awful lot of things that are working in our advantage. We need to stop looking in the rear view over things like muskrat. They're done. It's happened. Mitigate going forward, maximize profitability, but we really got to start looking forward as it relates to this province, and that's where I live, and my passion is here. But there's lots of opportunities right now, lots, and people want to be part of it here.
100%. And Jerry, on that note, I know you're passionate about Newfoundland as I am, and we both agree there's plenty of opportunity there. Tell me your thoughts, Jerry.
Well, I knew this would be an exciting and rewarding conversation. I love taking notes, Scott. Just me. But I just have so many notes here of things that, you've been in, beverages, then you moved into the HR, the family hotel business, your work in the community. I love your, 150 ideas, but pay attention, be open to ideas. It's obvious that, you just love moving forward. Despite, Newfoundland's challenges, they're in the rearview mirror. You're right. What can we do about any of that? We can just look to the positives. And I just want to say thanks for coming on board today with us and sharing your journey. It's been really, really refreshing. Thanks.
Yeah, we talked about most of the highlights. There's lots of low points, but I really appreciate it. And I think it's really important, as we all, our whole family is about giving back to the charities, because we're all three of us are involved, whether it's, we're just involved. And I think everyone, that's an important, big part of your community is an important thing too. You'll get out, you'll get out more than you put in.
But it's funny, I just say, Scott, you're right. We talk about the highlights, but the scars are what shape us. That being said, there's enough people out there that'll talk about the scars. You know what I mean? We don't need, I don't think anyone listening to this realizes that all this has been is just a wonderful panacea where we're all just counting the cash and it just saying it's just been lovely. But I think, for us and for you and just focusing on the positive is something that I think an awful lot of us need to get better at. I think even today, there's parts of my life today, I lost my mom in June. That was tough. And there's days where it's like, despite the fact Alan and I are the gale force winds guys, there's times when I get down. So I can only imagine if there's people that, are in the quagmire all the time, like we just got to try and drag all them out of it,
100%. Anyway, it's been, this has been great. I really, sometimes I forget some of the things, and it's nice to remember them.
Well, Scott, I want to thank you very much for joining us on Gale Force Winds. What a great conversation around entrepreneurship. I look back into your past. I'm glad you got to revisit some of those moments, and your family's done wonderful things. They've added a great deal to the community, and you and your family continue to add a great deal to the community. I love how in the core of it all, you want to give back. You want to build something and you want to give back. And you're going to make Newfoundland a better place. You are making Newfoundland a better place. And you're right. The future is certainly bright in Newfoundland. And I don't care what anybody says, the future is bright there. And it all hinges around the wonderful people that are there that are going to make all of this thing work. Jerry and I often use the expression, Scott, that a rising tide floats all boats, and you're a big part of that. You're causing that tide to come up and bringing other people along with you, and for that, you are to be celebrated. And I always like to leave the audience with my own piece of advice, Scott, and that is, quite frankly, the world needs more Scott Giannou. So thanks for joining Gale Force Wins.
Thank you, guys. Have a great day. Thank you.
Thank you for tuning in to Gale Force Wins. That's Gale Force Wins, WINS.com.